Welcome to another episode of the BJLJ Show. Duke is your ACC Tournament champions. They won 3 games in 3 days, beat Georgia Tech, beat UNC, and beat Louisville 73-62 to take home the crown of the ACC Tournament champions, all without Cooper Flagg and Malik Brown, which we'll talk about. But we're going to recap the ACC Tournament. We're going to talk about Cooper Flagg, his availability. Will it be round 1 or round 2 in the NCAA Tournament? And brackets are out. Do we like Duke's region? Are there sleepers? We'll talk about the first round potential matchup between Mount St. Mary's and American. And oh, by the way, Duke might face a familiar person, a familiar foe in the round of 32, and that is Jeremy Roach and the Baylor Bears. But Connor, how are you doing today?
I'm good. The familiar foe one was weird. Like, he's not been a foe. He's been a familiar friendly face until now. The familiar foe would be a Sweet 16 game against Caleb Love and the Arizona team they've played in each of the last 2 years.
Well, we made it 1 minute into the podcast without Connor calling me out on my bullshit. So that's a world record on this podcast. Yes, a familiar face with Jeremy Roach that we'll talk about. But the thing we need to talk about first, because we haven't talked before the ACC tournament, or since before the ACC tournament, the 3 games in 3 days Duke had, it was interesting. It was a lot of growth because obviously against Georgia Tech, a miserable first half, against UNC, a miserable second half. And then against Louisville, I didn't think it was that bad of a first half. I know they were down 5, but I even tweeted about it, though I had some Tito's in me. I was like, vibes are still good in the Spectrum Center. Like, I am okay with how Duke looked. In the second half, they poured it on them, scored 40, only gave up 24. That was very impressive because the one take I was sitting on, Connor, the one take I was sitting on after Louisville did score 38, if they're going to continue to score, was like, oh boy, we missed Jay Lucas, because UNC obviously had the 40-plus point second half and almost came back from 24 down. Georgia Tech scored well early in the first half against Duke, and so if Louisville is going to continue their 38 points into the second half, I was going to be like, oh boy, Duke misses Jay Lucas, but Duke's defense stifled them. They had 24 points, so that take is dead for right now.
I wish I had actually seen the tweet and I could credit who said it, but when they started slow against Georgia Tech, somebody told me that there was a tweet out there that said, was Jay Lucas the one responsible for telling Duke that the game had started?
I saw that.
Because that was such a who was that?
I don't know. I just saw it on my timeline. I did not see who it was.
If by whatever chance whoever tweeted that is actually listening, please let me know, because I want to give proper credit where it is due there, because that was hilarious, because it was a bad start against Georgia Tech. Now your vibes being high in that building, is that an unfamiliar feeling to you?
Yeah, I've witnessed more Duke wins in the Spectrum Center this year than I have Hornets wins. So that's impressive. I've been to 1 Duke game and 4 or 5 Hornets games. So shout out to Duke. I didn't know what it was like to win a game in Spectrum. And also, I didn't know you were allowed to shoot fireworks inside of an arena. When Duke won, during the celebration, they shot fireworks.
Were there actually fireworks?
Yeah, there were fireworks. And I was like, that can't be safe.
So I heard the bangs and I saw the confetti going. I just didn't see the fireworks because I was on the court moving around.
A little higher than the confetti, but yeah, they were. I was sitting next to Kobe in the 200, so I could see the fireworks are coming right at me, is what it looked like.
All right, I'll keep an eye out for those. I guess they're back in Charlotte next year. I didn't know that until we were down on the court and I was talking to ACC people. I was kind of like, well, that isn't great, but the following 2 years they're in Greensboro, and that's the good news here. Is 2027, 2028 Greensboro, where the tournament should be more often, and we'll have fun with it when it is in Greensboro.
I was going to say, Connor, it's I should have led with this too. 2 out of 3 years now, John Shire winning the ACC tournament. That is very impressive to have on his resume, an early resume of being ACC tournament champs 2 out of his first 3 years.
Couldn't help but notice that the team that beat him last year in the ACC tournament didn't even make it to Charlotte this year.
Yeah, that's true.
So there are quirks to a 18-team league with some teams that I feel like should be lopped off and sent to the CUSA or AAC or wherever. But no, Duke's 23rd ACC championship. It wasn't the cakewalk that Duke had for most of the regular season through the ACC. And from my perspective, at least, I think that's good for this team. I think some game pressure always helps you when you get to this time of year, as much as you would want to see not those types of situations just for your own blood pressure. But to your point about Louisville, I mean, dude, whether it was the game in Chapel Hill against Carolina when they got to a lead, or the game against Louisville, kind of the game against Georgia Tech too. If teams are making tough shots to get a lead on Duke, I don't really think there's much to worry about, because we haven't seen anybody make tough shots to that level for 40 minutes against this team.
Fair.
You know what I'm saying? I mean,
that's what I was going to say. When we're going to get into Louisville, I was going to talk about that in the second half about Terrence Edwards.
Yeah, I mean, look, if Terrence Edwards is going to drop 45 on you and beat you, okay. Like,
I mean, he had 29 on 29 shots.
Right.
Like, that is the recipe how you do lose. And without a couple of, I tweeted this, without a couple, let me start this sentence over, Connor. Without a couple of his grenades that he shot, and the grenades are into shot clock shots for people that don't know what I'm talking about. Without those, they would not have scored double figures in the second half until about the 8 minute mark left to go in the second half. Like,
yeah.
He bailed him out on that tough three. He shot a mid-range that bounced in as time expired for shot clock to beat the shot clock. And yeah, he 29 on 29 shots. Chucky Hepburn had 14 on 16 shots, and they were just shot chuckers. Chucky the chucker was 5 of 16.
The thing I would add about them being chuckers, I didn't think anybody else on Louisville wanted to shoot.
Oh, I know. Yeah, nobody else did. I mean, they combined for almost 47 shots of their 64, it looks like.
I mean, this was a game that Louisville, to win, was going to need something big from Javon Hadley, especially without Rain Smith in. Like, we have to acknowledge that part. As much as we're going to talk about Cooper Flagg and Malik Brown missing, Louisville's also missing a guy that was making, 4 threes a game? Yeah. I think he led the ACC in made threes per game. It's funny, like, to throw my dual beat hat into the ring here. Sometime around the time that Duke and Louisville played the first time of year in early December, Wake and Louisville were the 2 worst 3-point shooting high major teams in the country. And Wake just basically stopped taking as many threes. They said, we are not going to play this way, bashing our head against the wall and just hoping that we start making our shots. Louisville kind of went the opposite direction and just said, we're going to funnel as many threes as we can to the one guy that we know can shoot, and we're going to get a couple others from other guys, but mostly it's going to be Rain Smith taking threes or playing through, like, Chucky Hepburn penetrating and kicking or scoring at the rim, Terrence Edwards scoring in the mid-range, that kind of thing. It worked better for Louisville than it did for Wake. Without Rain Smith, they're a completely different team. And, now for the ACC's sake, they kind of did get screwed with their seed, and they're an 8 seed that would have to go play Auburn if they win. I hope they have Rain Smith back at least, because I don't know if they stand a chance against Auburn without him. I think that's about it. What did you have that you just looked up?
Well, I'm trying to find it on Zion's Twitter because we talked about it. The Spalding basketballs. Duke won with playing with Spalding basketballs, and I said on Crazy Cast that on a couple of the times I was on recently that, like, the basketballs matter. Like, people were complaining or worried about Proctor being over 5 from 3 the first 2 games. He was 6 of 14 in this one, but 1 of 5 from the line. He made his last free throw attempt in the game. But, like, I was telling people, like, those basketballs matter. I've said it on this show too, but to reemphasize that, like, it matters. And Zion had a tweet of the percentages that I'm trying to find because it's legit. And for whatever reason, here it is. I found it. So Duke is shooting 39% with a Nike ball, 50% with Adidas, 25 of 50. So low volume, but 50%. Wilson, these are all 3-pointers, by the way. Wilson, 36% on 28 of 77. And Nike, like I said, 39% on 254 out of 656. So that's the number one ball. Their worst shooting is with Spalding at 26%, 27 of 102 from three. And it's because those balls they're inflated. They're like brand new. They're hard as a rock. They don't have texture. And you see it when they ricochet off the rim. It just looks like these elite D1 players are shooting like middle schoolers with the way the ball goes off the rim. And so to see Duke win a game, 3 games in a row in 3 days with these basketballs, because 2 of the games they've lost, I think, was Kansas. Kansas might have been Adidas ball, but the Kentucky game was for sure a Spalding ball because I looked up the Google images about it.
It was.
That was the game where Con Knippel was like 4 of 20. Duke as a team, everybody was tweeting about, I thought this was a 3-point shooting team. This team can't hit a shot. And they play with Spalding. And for people wondering, they're not playing with Spalding in the NCAA tournament. They're playing with Wilson. So Duke's going to be okay in that front. But that's a real issue that people don't talk about enough, is the difference of basketballs. And I remember now, I'll talk about the Kentucky game real quick. Mark Pope said that they started practicing with the Spalding basketballs before the matchup with Duke to get familiar with them. And it showed because they hit the outside shots and Duke did not. Duke brought their own basketballs, and then the game happened and Duke struggled. So I say all that to say, on top of losing Cooper Flagg and Malik Brown, playing with basketballs where you rely on 3-point shooting and you did not hit any threes all year playing with Spalding basketballs, Duke saved their best 3-point shooting game in the ACC tournament for the end. They were 10 of 27. I mean, 14 attempts were Proctor's. Proctor was out there pulling like somebody had his family in hostage situation that he had to score every time he touched the ball. But he was 6 of 14, so they went in and he stepped up, and Isaiah hit 2 early ones as well. And that just showed that Duke, couldn't make them. And then most importantly, my man crush, Sion James, 2 for 2 from 3. He just does it all, dude. 15 points, but 2 of 2 from 3. And so, yeah, basically what I'm saying is I take that away. That's as big of a deal for me. They won with these type of basketballs.
Yeah. To give you a little statistical insight perspective, the field goal percentage, which is the number I've been obsessed with all year with this team, to put into context of how good of shooters they are. Their field goal in Charlotte was 49.2%, 53.6%, and 54%. It's pretty much the worst 3-game stretch that this team has had since the first Louisville game, followed by Incarnate Word, followed by the atrocity that was the George Mason game, that 68-47 game where nobody hit shots.
I was in attendance for Incarnate Word, and that was very weird because I think the halftime score was like 28-20 or something like that. And Cooper Flagg had 6 points that whole game, and you just felt weird. It was just a weird atmosphere. Like you'd feel the weird energy in Cameron.
Well, the other thing about Incarnate Word was it was 2 days after they played at Louisville on a Sunday night.
Yeah, and that was their first quick turnaround of the season.
And that was John telling us basically they scheduled that game before the ACC schedule was out. If they'd known that the ACC was going to give them a Sunday night opener instead of a Saturday opener, they wouldn't have scheduled themselves to have a quick turnaround game like that, because it does you no good to play Incarnate Word, on December 10th when you just play at Louisville on December 8th. And a night game. I can't stress that enough. Like, they played at Louisville, I think, if I remember correctly, it was a 6 o'clock tip. So 2-hour game, hour and a half to 2 hours to go from the arena to the plane. If I remember correctly, from flying out to Louisville a couple times, it's maybe a 1 or 2 hour flight. You're talking about getting home around midnight, 1 a.m., getting back to Durham, going through a Monday, and then you have a game on Tuesday. It's just not a conducive element to what you want to do in December. But anyway, I mean, I also think that along with the balls being a problem for shooting, it's the rims in an NBA arena. I always think that the rims are just a little bit tighter in those NBA arenas with NBA rims. And I thought it last year when they went to DC to play where the Wizards play. And I try to watch where I think the SEC tournament was in Nashville, where the Predators play. I think shooting was better there based on the scores alone. And the shooting was better there.
So I almost normally I would agree with that, but the only hiccup I have with this is Duke scored 110 points in Madison Square Garden. That's where I'm like, you know what? That is because again, I agree with you because the Kentucky game, that was a bad shooting night in an NBA arena. And then I was going to tweet that during the first half against Georgia Tech. And I was like, oh, wait, we did score 110 in Madison Square Garden. And Spencer Hubbard hit a step back three and beat Illinois by 1 billion. So that's my one what if, but that's where, again, the basketballs are my argument because NBA arena with basketball as Duke's accustomed to, they light it up. You give them an NBA arena with basketball they're not familiar with, and the way they come off the rim, it's a whole different story. And so that's where I disagree because of the 110 points, but I almost agree with your take.
Are you trying to say Spencer Hubbard isn't a good shooter on every rim?
Oh, that's just when I think of Duke, Illinois, I just think of that one play. That's it.
I do need at some point in the next couple of weeks, I do need to do another Spencer Hubbard story.
You know who you need to do a story on is Pat Ngongba.
I just wrote it. I see you don't. This is more evidence that you don't read this website.
I have been so busy with March Madness preview, I have not checked in on Pat Ngongba stories. Sorry, I always say the end with it. Ngongba stories. He has stepped up huge for Duke with Malik Brown going down. 7 points against Georgia Tech on 3 of 3. Against UNC, he was a man amongst boys. And
high 12.
Yeah, 12 and 3. But that one the one grown man play he did against a grown man where he just rips the ball out of Jalen Withers' hands, who's 24 years old, and he's 18. It looked like a dad playing his 5-year-old son on a basketball goal on the back of a door right here in an office and just palm the hell out of it. And that was impressive. And then, yeah, his 7 points and 3 blocks against Louisville. And he was emphatic around the rim as a shot blocker. He still has to work on things defensively, and that's going to happen. But he has a very bright future. He is special. His offensive game and his touch, dude, he's just I love his game. I love his offensive game.
If you head over to Devils Illustrated right now, you can check out about 1,000 words about Big Pat.
There you go.
Quotes from Kamen Malawach, John Shire, Con Knipple, and Pat. Pat might be the most soft-spoken and kind of uncomfortable in the spotlight player on this team. Not to call him out or anything. It's fine where he's coming from, but
he's just a shy kid.
Yeah, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. His teammates want to talk about him plenty. And there was a fun line from Con Knipple. It was after the UNC game when I asked Con about how far has Pat come since the first time he started practicing with these guys to now. And Con was like, well, I knew he was a beast because we played him in AAU. And he said, I'm going to mess up the quote, so go to the story and read it. But Con said, he gave us 33 and 17 in AAU. We didn't have a center, but we knew he was a beast. I'm picturing a team of Milwaukee Con Knipples running around getting owned by a big 6'10", 250-pound Pat Ngongba. But look, the per 40 numbers for his games in Charlotte are really easy because he only played 40 minutes there. So he had 26 points. I think it was 7 rebounds, 5 blocks, 2 assists, 2 turnovers. I mean, he's really good. And it's not coming out of nowhere. It's just coming out of a place of, look, guy was not thought to be able to give Duke quality minutes this year because of missing all of last year and because he was so slow and behind everybody in summer and preseason. But they've kept developing him behind the scenes. Then when they needed him to step in, when Malik Brown went down with the knee injury in January, he was kind of ready. Not quite, and that's why you saw Mason Gillis in there playing the 5 sometimes. But then the second time when Malik separated his shoulder against Virginia, you didn't see much Mason Gillis in there at the 5 anymore because Big Pat was ready. The kid is is ready, and he's gonna be really good. He already is kind of good.
Yeah, and Malawach, same thing. I want to give him praise, is because when Malik Brown went down, he had to get a bigger workload as well. I mean, his minutes are still he got a little bump, 24 against Georgia Tech, 23 against UNC. That was some due to foul trouble, but then 27 against Louisville, but 14-9 and 4 blocks against Georgia Tech, 13-9 and 2 blocks against UNC, and his plus minus, I think he was plus 17 in that game, and Gongbo was minus 14, but that was a different conversation because the lineup there was a different story. We're not going to harp on that. But he was plus 17 against UNC, where literally 6 days prior, it was Malik Brown was plus 20 and Malawach was like minus 5. And to see him be the reason why Duke won against UNC a week after he was arguably the reason why UNC was still in the game shows a quick growth of him going from 2 points at UNC to 13-9 in the next matchup 6 days later. And then obviously 8 points, 10 rebounds, 2 blocks against Louisville. Ryan Russillo posted a clip of him with the caption "impressive" on Twitter, where it was him guarding Terrence Edwards on a switch, stayed with him stride for stride, and then blocked the shot out of bounds. Like when he is locked in and he's free flowing like that defensively, you see the NBA potential. He's switching against a guard on the perimeter. And so, yeah, Malawach, outstanding job as well. He deserves the flowers. Just the two centers for Duke, Malawach and Gongba, deserve the flowers for how they played. And this is all leading to the AC Tournament MVP, who we're going to talk about after your thoughts on Malawach.
Yeah, my only real thoughts are it's interesting that you draw the line of parallels between Duke's ACC championship 2 years ago and the one this year. The 2 years that Duke has an actual rim protecting center in there, they win ACC championships. The 1 year in between, when you're trying to make Kyle Filipowski into a center and he's not, and you don't have a backup that can also rim protect. Not that last year's season was a failure or anything. Like, they went to the Elite Eight, but it's just, when you look at it through this prism, Duke is going to want to have a rim protecting center. I'll say that and kind of leave that there. It just makes such a difference for your defense, and Duke being where they are in the college basketball landscape, they probably most years should not be left without a rim protecting center.
So I agree. And one thing Duke can't live without, clearly, is Con Knippel, because Con Knippel has been on a heater for the last month. He has had one game since, what's today's date? Today's date, the 17th. So a month to this day, back in February 17th. From there to now, he's only had one game where he scored less than 15 points. That was 14 against Florida State. So in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 out of 9 games, he scored 15 or more, and 28 and 8 and 5 against Georgia Tech, 17, 4 and 3 against UNC, and then 18, 8 and 3 and 2 steals against Louisville. The guy is just, he should have been first team All ACC. We're going to look back and laugh that he did not get the fifth role there in All ACC honors, first team All ACC, because the dude's been phenomenal for a month now for Duke. What is your takeaway with Con Knippel?
I just wrapped up telling JJ about this. Look, I don't have an All ACC vote. Full disclosure, I wish I did, but it's not a fight that's worth going through at this point. He would have been on my first team. Like, I feel very I didn't go through the whole process of narrowing down who my list would have been, because there's only so many hours of a day, and if I'm not going to vote, then I'm not going to go through the process of doing an entire ballot. But he would have been on my first team. I mean, we spend so much time talking about Cooper Flagg with this team, and we spend so much time talking about the team in general, that I do think we could talk more about Con. I do think he's kind of overlooked in a way. I understand why. Like, Cooper Flagg is the best college basketball player I have ever seen. We need to talk about him more than the other guys on this team, but that kind of comes at a cost, and the cost is, like, somebody like Con Knippel gets overlooked. The thing that blows me away, and honestly, this probably goes back to you talking him up in the summer and putting out clips of him, kind of his AAUs and his, what camp was he matched up against RJ in? Was that like a Jordan camp?
Yeah, it was probably like an Adidas or Nike camp or something, one of those circuit camps.
Yeah, he's not the most athletic looking kid in the world. He's not gonna, he's not an off the bus all-star. The way he understands leverages and angles and his anticipation levels, I don't know that a freshman can have better any of those boxes to check off. Like any of those, if you're looking at creating a player in a video game, I don't know if the slider levels can be any higher for a freshman. Like he understands the game on a level that usually you don't understand it until you're the age of some guys that he's able to beat. Like he's able to do things to a veteran level, and he's a freshman.
And he's a competitor. Like he is such a competitor. He has that asshole to him, and I say that in a complimentary way. Like the clip of him after the UNC game where the reporter asked him from Carolina Blitz, what did he say to Pat Gongbo when he was going to the free throw line? And he just said, just don't do anything stupid like get a lane violation.
I'm glad you cited the Carolina Blitz one because I asked him about that too, and he gave me almost the same quote.
Really?
Yeah.
I love that because that is the type of asshole, chippy, like guy that you want on your team. Like a guy that's just, he has that edge. Like that's a competitor. And that's why it's a compliment is that guy is just a fire competitor. And it shows because I joke that there's no such thing as 50-50 balls with him on the floor. We saw that in the Louisville game. I can't remember what possession it was. And the UNC game where Isaiah and him dive on the floor and he gets up and just yells at Isaiah and they get in each other's face because they're so hyped. If that second half never happened, and I wish it didn't because that was a cinematic masterpiece of the first half. And the worst thing that happened for Duke in the UNC game was halftime was approaching in 1 minute. Where that run started with 8 minutes to go in the first half, UNC rolls over and quits. If it starts at the beginning of the second half, it's a blowout. But it's like UNC got to catch their breath at halftime, regroup, make adjustments. That's the worst thing that happened for Duke in that game. But that moment in particular of him and Isaiah diving for the loose ball and then getting up and celebrating while they're up 20-plus points, it just shows the camaraderie of this team that it doesn't matter what the score is. We're going to treat every possession like it's a one-score game.
Yeah, and that's the type of thing that when people like myself and others talk about this team being different and special, like it's that kind of shit. It's talent level to a certain degree. Like these aren't untalented players. The NBA draft is going to show us that if it hasn't already been proven over and over again throughout the season. But it's the blend and the kind of hand in hand of when you pair the competitive spirit, the fiery competitiveness with talent and with the depth and the buy-in and all of it. It's all going into the same cauldron. That's when you get a 31-3 team going into the NCAA tournament. That's when you get a team that we can talk about as being one of the best Duke teams we have ever seen. Like yeah. I'm 35, you are 30 now.
31.
Yeah, that's right. We had the conversation about how you had the bad birthday. Turning 30 is not a problem. 31 is you're done. But like these are the ones. All of that stuff blended together. Like this team top end talent, maybe 2019 was more talented. Maybe Zion and RJ Barrett and Cam Reddish do wind up being more talented, but the buy-in level, the depth, the contributions, these guys love to talk about 1 through 15 and throw Stanley Borden, Spencer Hubbard, Neil Begovic, and Cam Sheffield into the mix.
I think both teams have the camaraderie. I think that team was close, but I think what separates this team from that team is the basketball IQ. Like Cooper Flagg, because Cooper Flagg and Zion both got double teamed, and what Cooper Flagg would do is he would let the pressure come to him because he knew right away to throw that skip pass, where Zion would put his head down and try and just run right through you to get around you. And sometimes he did against certain teams because he was that strong and that quick. And then Barrett was just like, I'm going to put my head down and get 30 shots. Yeah. And Knipple, though he showed that against like Kentucky early in the year, and maybe in the Kansas game a little bit, he shot a little too much to where you don't see that now, where there's been times I've said on here, I'm like, hey, I need you to shoot more. Like, I need you to shoot more than 8 shots in a game. And that's because he wants to affect winning by being a facilitator, which we saw with his 8 assists against Georgia Tech. So I think the IQ on top of better shooting team as well. But in terms of like superior talent of Zion and Flagg, and then RJ Barrett and Knipple as the 1-2s, I would take this group because of the basketball IQ of like, when something bad happens, I trust you to put in your mind to make an adjustment rather than I'm just going to put my head down and go to the rim and RJ Barrett flailing for a foul or shooting a bad 3-pointer.
Yeah, that's another thing I talk a lot about with Rod Baxley, who's on the beat with me, works for Fayetteville Observer. I can't think of the last time Con Knipple made the wrong basketball play. I'm sure it's happened. Like you go back and rewatch and press rewind all the time. I'm sure it happens, but you can always count on him to make the right play, whether it's shooting or whether it's a lob at the rim or a skip pass or taking it out. And you can always count on him doing whatever's right. The shot might not go in, but that's just basketball at that level. When you're making the right play, eventually your averages are going to mean that you're scoring or you're doing whatever you need to be doing.
Yeah. I mean, look, the one play that people are going to probably think about when you say that is the Kansas game, the final play down the stretch. And he
didn't make the mistake.
Well, what I'm getting to was that was November 26th. So like, if you want to blame him because he was in it, it's November 26th, but also again, very early in the season, you're still learning. The guys you're playing with, Sion James is a cutter. And so that happens again. I trust both of them to be on the same page because, again, we see why John Shire continues. And I said it during that game. People were mad at me on Twitter saying that Knipple, because that needs to be talked about as well. First part of this season, people were not fans of Con Knipple. Why is this white boy playing? He can't shoot. He doesn't do anything. He shoots bricks against Kentucky. We lost Kentucky and Kansas because he makes bad plays. And I'm just like, trust the process. This kid's going to be okay. And he's been level-headed ever since. And during that whole time from then to now, John Shire's let him be a prominent ball handler. And it shows why, because this offense is third in KenPom, and that's due to him being one of the dominant ball handlers on the team.
They went all the way down to third. Yeah, they did.
Spalding
they got passed by Florida and Auburn.
Yeah, Florida has reached a different level right now. Maybe they peaked too early, though. They still got 6 games. But third still in KenPom, and I just remember the conversations about Con Knipple shouldn't be playing the minutes that he's playing, and I'm just like, relax. I basically had it's like the Twitter meme of the guy pulling out a sword, and here comes an army of 100 people running after him. That was me defending Con Knipple, it felt like, in November and December of this season.
It's now dawning on me that you have not watched Game of Thrones, have you?
No, I have not. But I knew that was Game of Thrones. I knew it was a Game of Thrones GIF, but I don't know why I blanked on it when I was describing it.
Yeah, I think part of that discourse early in the season also stemmed from fans thought his minutes should go to Isaiah Evans. And then when Isaiah Evans goes in there and makes 6 first-half threes against Auburn, it's like, holy shit, why don't we do this every game? This is really fun. It's like, well, we can't do this every game.
It's like going to the casino and winning on your first 3 spins of roulette. It's like, this is awesome. Why do we not do this more often? Like, this is such an easy way to make money. And then you keep staying at the table, and then you keep losing. And that's kind of how the Isaiah experience is like, it is ecstasy when he is on, and then when it's off, it's like, oh, okay, we need to like call an audible here because it could get ugly. And that's basically my experience at a casino and watching these 2 basketball teams at times. But it's pure ecstasy, and oh God, let's make an adjustment.
Did you happen to see the quote that John gave about the second half of the Carolina game?
I did not. No, I did not.
I don't think Duke's turnover number was that high. I think they might have had 6 or 7 in the second half, but a lot of them were live balls that gave them fast breaks. So John said something to the extent of, I would have rather had us punt the ball out of bounds than commit some of the turnovers that we did.
I did not see that, but yeah, we had 13 turnovers, and we did have live ball in the second half, and also a couple missed rush shots, and those are basically turnovers against UNC. But that's a great quote because I felt the same way. Just throw it in the stands and get back on defense.
Throw it in the stands and let's set our defense instead of let's have them go 2-on-1 or 3-on-2. Yeah.
I mean, they hit 3 threes all game, and all 3 were Elliott Cadeau. But that is a conversation we would have had if this wasn't 3 games in 3 days, because now Duke won the championship, so that's all irrelevant. But with that being said, Connor, we're going to pivot. Duke won AC regular season, AC tournament, and now here is the grand stage of them all, the NCAA tournament. I'm wearing my March Madness polo right now. Quarters.
Where's that from?
Indianapolis. And so
nice.
I wear it every March. So basically every recording we're going to do during March Madness, there's a 98% chance I'll be wearing this. It will be washed. It depends, actually. I'm superstitious. So if Duke wins, I'm not going to wash that thing. So Duke is the 1 seed, the second 1 seed, right? Auburn was number 1. Duke was number 2.
Yeah.
Florida, or who was number 3? Houston was 3. Florida was 4.
Yeah.
So Duke plays either the winner of Mount St. Mary's or American. And if people are like, well, I don't know anything about them. Well, good news for you. I watched film for 48 hours this weekend on every double-digit seed and did scouting reports on every single one. Check it out on my Twitter at JMansTakes. It was a doozy. But I am I'll just give you a brief synopsis of both teams. We'll start with Mount St. Mary's. People forget Mount St. Mary's beat Miami in overtime in Miami this year, 78-74. So that was honestly the nail in the coffin to this Miami team, was when Mount St. Mary's went to town and beat them in Miami. That summed up Miami season right there.
It's funny you say that, because when you ask me what the death knell of Miami was, I figure it was Drake losing. It was losing to Drake in the first game of the Charleston tournament. But Drake's pretty freaking good. I think, did they win 30 or 31?
Yeah, they're over 30.
Yeah,
and they're really good. But losing to this team, and no disrespect, Junior, Mount St. Mary's 292nd in offense efficiency, 176th in defense efficiency, and they turn the ball over a lot, 21.7% in the country. That's 359th. They do have 4 guys that score 10-plus points, though, which is good for them, but that is the breakdown for them. I don't know. The American we're going to talk about, but I want to give the flowers to Junior Robinson, who was my point guard at high school. Connor covered Junior when he played at Eastern Alamance with me as well. Junior went on to Mount St. Mary's and played in March Madness and won this game that Mount St. Mary's is about to play, the play-in game. And they played Villanova in the first round against Jalen Brunson. So
I was there. I was there in Dayton when Mount St. Mary's won, because Wake Forest was also out there. So for the Burlington newspaper, the Burlington Times News, basically RIP at this point, I got to go out there and see Junior the day before and see Junior have I don't know if he had 20 or not, but he hit a big shot in the last minute.
In the playing game? Yeah. In the playing game, I think he had 20, and he was interviewed by Avery Johnson at the end because he hit the dagger 3. And so that was really cool to see him. I think it was on True TV. But, if Duke plays Mount St. Mary's, I know he's playing overseas right now. Maybe I'll give him a buzz. But, hey, you want to hop on the BJLJ Show to give a Mount St. Mary's and Duke preview?
Oh my God. That would be awesome. That would be fantastic.
So that is our Mount St. Mary's coverage right there, if Duke can play Mount St. Mary's. And the second team is American. I'm trying to go through my notes because I had so many. All you need to know is American had the worst second half performance in college basketball history this year against UNC. They were down 9 points at halftime and lost the game by 52 points. So this team, they're a veteran team. I'm trying to go through my notes. I probably just need to go to my Twitter and look at my
They were 22-12. They did not win the Patriot League regular season. If I'm clicking around here, right. They tied with Bucknell and split with Bucknell in the regular season. I think they were the 2 seed in the conference tournament. They did not have to play Bucknell a third time because Navy, which was not very good this year, actually, 10-8 in the league and 15-19 overall. Navy pulled it off an upset over Bucknell. So
I found my notes, Connor. So, yeah, one of the weirdest losses I can remember, 9-point game at half, lost by 52 in the Dean Dome. I watched that game on TV, too. I could not believe what I was watching. They lost by 7 to High Point, who High Point, is a team that –
they're a tournament team.
Yeah, they could be a popular upset pick, and they lost by 5 to Virginia. So, they've held against an ACC team against UVA. I know they're not a good team, but 5 against UVA – lost 7 to High Point, who could be an upset team, and they were down 9 at half against UNC, and then they might as well have just forfeited the second half. But they're the number 1 team in the country in minutes continuity, so they got their guys, and they want to play a certain amount of guys. 45% of their shots are threes. I think they beat Mount St. Mary's in the round of the play-in game to face Duke, but I think Duke obviously rolls against either one. My main question to you for the round of 64, Connor, is Cooper Flagg going to play?
I think he is. The trend, what we're hearing, even watching the way he moves on the court, not to read into whether he's like standing up more than other teammates or whatever. I think you see him play. I think the interesting hypothetical here is somebody, I think it was Blair Holloway on Twitter, brought it up to me, was if Duke is playing a second round Sweet 16 type of game, does he attempt to play on that ankle? We have no way of knowing. Like I said to Blair on Twitter, like the one thing you can't know is how intensive of testing he did. And then how intensive of testing it would have been ramped up so much. Like he would have been jumping and running and trying to move on it if the stakes were higher. Like I said, based on John Shire telling us after the championship game on Saturday night, they think there's a great chance that he's back and ready to go. I think you're looking at Cooper Flagg playing in the first round, whoever they're playing.
Yeah, well, that's good news. I have, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see I have my bracket, no judging. Nobody judges brackets.
I'm judging the hell out of it. I don't care.
Every bracket is undefeated right now. If you're listening to the podcast, you can see my ESPN bracket. That's what Connor is mocking my picks.
Good pick on VCU.
So, yeah, thank you. I have Duke obviously beating beat American or Mount St. Mary's. And then I have Duke facing Baylor. I know that's probably going to be a popular pick for everybody, which makes me want to go back to pick Mississippi State. But regardless, whoever Duke plays in the round of 32, I think Duke wins. And I have Duke facing Oregon in the Sweet 16. I have Oregon because I want to bet, like, one of my teams that I even tweeted, I like Liberty. Liberty is one of those, they are the March Madness team that they're going to shoot a ton of threes. They're going to make the most difficult threes. It's like Jack Golke on steroids with the 2 guys that they have. Their best player shoots, he's in the 99th percentile in every shooting category on Synergy with how he shoots the basketball. And he's not even like the most popular one. Mahaney is the second leading scorer, and he's the most popular one with how tough his shots are. But I say all that to say Dana Altman has never lost the first round matchup while being at Oregon. He's 8-0 in his last 8 first round matchups at Oregon. So I think Oregon's length will upset or avoid the upset against Liberty. But I do have Akron beating Arizona because their pace is insane. I think Caleb Love is going to shoot them out of the game. Akron is small, but I have Akron, Oregon, and then Oregon beating Akron. Duke plays Oregon in the Sweet 16. And then I have Duke playing Alabama in the Elite 8. Alabama knocks off VCU, who is my Sweet 16 dark horse because their defense travels and they are legit and they are experienced, well coached. And then I have Duke, Tennessee in the Final Four. I have Tennessee knocking off Houston, Auburn, Texas Tech in the other half, Connor. Texas Tech's a really good team. I think they can sneak in to be a Final Four team. And then the rematch of Duke-Auburn is my national championship. Good news for me is this is the first bracket I'm going to do out of probably 20 on top of betting every game. So this is just Duke-Auburn rematch for the show that I kind of just fell into because Auburn got a really good draw. It sucks for Louisville being an 8 seed. They got to play them second round. But I think Auburn gets to the Final Four national championship, and then here comes Duke-Auburn. I have Duke beating Auburn in the national championship.
Yeah, Louisville, if they knew they were going to be that bad, they should have just lost to Duke 100-2 in the ACC championship game and tried to get a 10 seed. They knew the committee thought so little of them.
It's so insane that they're an 8 seed and the third place team's a 5 seed, and they played in the ACC championship, down their guys. And then if you're going to judge the 2 seed and in the ACC and give them an 8 seed, how the hell is UNC an 11 seed? That is just crazy. I know the metrics like UNC has this and that, but if Louisville's metrics are just, they're the 13th team in the country, and they were beating Duke at halftime in the championship game. How are they?
The AP poll doesn't mean shit. The thing that I go to is, okay, they're an 8 and Clemson's a 5. Louisville beat them twice and went further in the conference tournament than they did.
Correct.
How are there 3 seeds difference in looking at those 2 resumes? I don't know, man. Sometimes it gets really frustrating evaluating not only basketball but football, and how, like, okay, do wins and losses actually matter, or are we so far into the weeds of metrics and strength of schedule and every other number that do we forget, like, head to head should matter.
It should matter the most. Yeah. Like, the only reason it doesn't matter for Duke and Auburn, why Auburn's number 1 overall seed, is because they had the most quad 1 wins of all time in a season. So the head-to-head matchup does not seem to hold enough weight, and rightfully so, because Auburn deserves it, though they've been sliding of late. So that also makes me a little nervous about me picking them in the championship, that they've lost like 3 out of the last 4 or 5 games. But it's that side of the bracket is kind of a wild card to me. I have you can see here, Connor, the Iowa State plays the winner of San Diego State UNC. That's San Diego State. I don't think UNC is going to beat San Diego State. San Diego State's one of the best defensive teams in the country, and the fact they're a play-in team is baffling to me because they beat Creighton by 16, they beat Houston, and they beat somebody else that's a prominent team that's in the tournament, and they're a play-in 11 seed, and UNC beat UCLA. It's just like, how –
were they one of the ones that beat Houston when Kelvin Sampson was out there saying, like, we suck on defense, we're nowhere close to where we need to be?
Possibly. I don't know. But I have them beating Ole Miss, and then I flip-flop between Iowa State beating San Diego State, because I think Iowa State could be in trouble against Lipscomb because they just lost their second leading scorer for the whole tournament. And so Lipscomb, veteran team, somebody to watch. But that bracket could be interesting. That part of the region, I think they could really like blow itself up, and you just don't know. And so I love a lot of the double-digit seeds, and I'm biased on that because, like I said, on Twitter, I have done a breakdown of all teams, so I know them very well of just watching them. And yeah, I am a little homer when it comes to double-digit seeds, but I do like Duke to pull it out. I think Oregon would be a good test for Duke if they do play in the Sweet 16. But the would you say Duke Baylor, or would you say Duke Mississippi State?
I don't know. I mean, you know me, like I always want the more interesting stories to write. So I kind of want to see, not only for Jeremy, but VJ Edgecombe was at Countdown to Craziness with the 6-man. I think it was all 6 came. Con Knipple might not have been there. That might be the one omission of Duke's freshman class that went to the countdown last year, like going into the season. And the other part is, that 3 out of 5 Mount Verde starters are going to be in Raleigh this weekend from last year's Mount Verde team.
I did not know that.
Cooper, Liam McNeely, because UConn, and if UConn wins, they play Florida. That's the other 1 seed. It's in Raleigh this weekend. And then Robert O'Wright is a freshman guard for Baylor, along with VJ Edgecombe. They're actually kind of those two, and their emergence and their growth over the season is why Jeremy Roach's minutes declined a little bit.
Roach only played like 12 minutes the last game or 2 games ago.
He also had a rough season with, I think he had one concussion and maybe one ankle or foot injury in there. Like, he played a lot of games, but a lot of it was limited. It hasn't been the greatest season for Jeremy. But it can become a great season with one win and one good performance, which would take pulling off a pretty big upset.
Yeah, it was Duke sold at the top of that stock. Hasn't worked out well for Jeremy, and they just have a better point. He's not a point guard, and he's a 2 guard that's 6 foot, and Duke got the most out of that in his tenure. But it's really being exposed at Baylor that he's not a guy that they thought he was, because he's a shooting guard in a point guard's body, and that is what's hurting him.
Like we were talking, you're talking before we came on. Like I don't know if I'll do a bracket this year or not. I want to take time to write stories and like cover the tournament and cover Duke. So I'd rather do that than chew off. I don't want to just fill out a 5-minute bracket just so I can say I have a bracket. Like, if I do one, I want to put actual like research and time into it. And I don't know if I'll have that time. So there have been a couple of years where I haven't done a bracket, and it's actually been more enjoyable, I think. So that'll probably be what I wind up doing.
That's a shame. I mean, I'm not judging, but I am judging. I'll be at the March Madness house starting Wednesday, from Wednesday through Monday. So if we do record one show this weekend, I'll have to make sure to pace myself so then we can record, because it's me and 9 of my friends, and we're just watching 4 screens of college basketball for 12 hours a day. And then once it's the round of 32, where, games cut in half, women's college basketball starts up, and so that goes on the TVs as well, and we just keep going at it. So it's a bender, and it's a fun time. So I'm looking forward to that, Connor. Who would you say is your national champion? That's what I want to close with. Who would you say is your national champion?
Oh man, it's really hard to separate what I've watched for the majority of their 34 games. Like Duke looks like the odds-on favorite. They are the odds-on favorite, basically. I think having beaten Auburn already this year, I go back and think to how much better Duke is since that game. Like, Pat Gongbo was a non-factor in that game. Now he scored 26 points in the ACC tournament and can give them quality minutes against quality opponents. Con Knipple and Cooper Flagg are so much better than they were back when they played in that game. It's just, this team has come a long way, and that's not going to be said very often, because they started out as a title favorite, and in some ways you're going to be told that they're doing exactly what they were supposed to do all along. But the evolution of this team should not get lost in the sauce and lost in the preseason projections of where they should be. You shouldn't lose track of, just because Duke is doing what was expected of them this year and what the bar was set at, shouldn't skew you from also acknowledging this team has gotten better and evolved throughout the season. They're better than they were in November. They're better than they were every month down the line. That's what I would bank on for picking Duke as a national champion.
You heard it here first, Connor O'Neill.
I think they'll do it. I'll hedge it with, a lot of times the best team does not win this tournament, because it is matchup based and it is based on how it's officiated.
Well, luckily for Duke, everybody thinks it's either Auburn, because of, though they've lost 3 out of 5, it's because of what they've done all year, or Florida, because Florida's been the hottest team and they've just been burning through SEC competition. So to you and I agree that I think Duke is arguably the best team, but we don't have SEC right beside our name. It is the ACC. And so for that, I don't think Duke's going to get as much coverage as your Florida, as your sexy national champion pick, and then Auburn they speak for themselves. So Duke has that going for them at least. But I want you listeners, if you follow us on Twitter, tweet us your brackets, tweet us your champions. I know Connor, it killed Connor that he had to pick Duke knowing that he's a Wake Forest guy. So,
Wow.
so Connor has Duke winning the national championship. I picked Duke to win national championship. You tell us who you have as your national champions and who your upsets. And so I can't wait for March Madness. It is Monday, Wednesday are the playing games, or tomorrow start playing games.
Yeah, tomorrow, buddy.
Tomorrow starts playing games. Wednesday playing games. March Madness starts Thursday. So we'll see you guys on the other side of that. Connor, appreciate you as always.
Thanks, Jordan.